Welcome, everyone, to the third session of National Interstate and Vanliner Insurance's 2026 webinar series. Throughout the year, you are invited to attend our webinar series focused on providing education to motor carriers on compliance updates, technology adoption, claims management best practices, and emerging safety trends in the commercial transportation industry. My name is Chris Steinbauer. I'll be your host for today's session, Maximizing the ROI of Dash Cameras with Bobbi Farrow. Bobbi is a senior channel manager at Netradyne, where she specializes in building strategic partnerships within the insurance industry. Over the past 6 years, she has worked closely with insurance carriers, brokers, captives, and risk management organizations to help leverage telematics and AI-driven fleet safety data to improve underwriting insights, reduce claim exposure, and enhance overall industry outcomes. At Netradyne, Bobbi focuses on developing collaborative programs that align fleet safety initiatives with insurance and risk mitigation strategies. She is passionate about helping organizations utilize data to create safer driving cultures, improve operational performance, and recognize positive driver behavior through proactive coaching and gamification. Today's webinar is focused on how motor carriers can turn their AI dash camera investment into measurable ROI by improving safety, reducing claims, and strengthening operational efficiency. Bobbi's going to share real-world strategies, challenges, and results so you can walk away with actionable ways to maximize the value of your technology. And I want to note that although you may not have Netradyne, these best practices can be applied to nearly all camera providers in the market. So as we go through the session today, please drop any questions in the chat found at the top of your screen. At the end, we're going to open it up for a live Q&A, and please stick around till the end for a special offer from National Interstate and Vanliner. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce Bobbi from Netradyne.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting me and having me today and being here just to really learn more about how to leverage dash cameras. I appreciate National Interstate and Vanliner for leading this and bringing everyone together to be able to continue to kind of evolve and learn how to leverage these different systems. We're going to jump right into it. So the first thing when we look at programs or utilizing a camera, there's different reasons that we would want to leverage these cameras and what really makes our program ideal. And so when we're putting together these programs, there's these 4 things that I think really stand out in making sure that we have the ideal program. And one is that safety and risk management. Does it reduce collisions and claims? And can we use the video for near misses and risky behavior? Can we start to understand what that looks like? We want to lower severity and frequency in our claims, and we want to be able to provide verifiable data to insurance carriers. We want to be able to show that we are reducing our risk and that we're managing our risk. The second thing is operational efficiency. So can we reduce fuel consumption and idle time? Can we monitor and reduce vehicle downtime? And can we optimize routing? The other thing is driver engagement. If we put in a system and we can't get drivers engaged, we won't get any of these results. So leveraging the different tools within the system to get that driver engagement and to foster this safety first culture. And then finally, compliance, which is like to automate some of the hours of service, the IFTA, like all those different compliance pieces that are included. So these are like the 4 fundamentals I think you have to have in order to have kind of an ideal telematics program. Now, the program itself, when you get it in, when it's put in place, I always like to just touch on really making sure that your policies and your procedures and your consents are all up to date. So one of the things that we need to know is that this is changing. This is changing from state to state. And so going in and making sure that you're updating those so that they align with the states that you operate in is important. So that small disclaimer, but something to always be thinking about as part of your telematics program, that you are being aware that those laws do change and that you're updating those policies. Even and then understanding the consent requirements. So these are kind of again, not from I'm not a lawyer, I can't advise you on this, but these are just some general guidelines on this consent requirements. Again, go to your team, your legal team can help you with these, but consent requirements are typically required in certain situations. So if you don't have an inward camera on, probably not required. But then if you have the camera on that's analyzing but not recording, not required, but maybe a good idea. But if you're using like a visual login system that's recognizing who the driver is and assigning that driver to that vehicle, then that would be more of a requirement. But just understanding these consent requirements I think are really valuable and important. So if you need help with any of this, we do have a website that is available to help with making sure that you have those updated policies for drivers. So just if you need that, there's a link there that we can provide that can help like with templates for those types of things. But again, this is just a reminder, if you put cameras in years ago and you haven't updated those policies or procedures, then it's a great idea to do that. Okay. So cameras have evolved a lot over time. And the reason I like to touch on this is because all of these cameras are available and out in the market today. So the first type of camera that we evolved was an event recorder. It was on an SD card. It would just record all the time. And then if there was an event that occurred, you'd go pull that out and you'd look for that moment on the card. And then that's what you would have to leverage to do exoneration. And then you would probably pick up some like happen tos. I happened to see the driver did this. I happened to see that. So those happen tos you could leverage for coaching on there, but very manual process. Then cameras evolved to being these trigger-based. So now they're looking for things that say, hey, that's a trigger. Let's look at that, the hard brake, the G-force. Let's offload that moment. And then that would either go through some type of human review, AI algorithm. It would be analyzed, and then it would provide those insights and those feedbacks. So then you could coach your driver on that moment in time, or that might give you that exoneration or that understanding of what happened during that moment in time. And now they've evolved to being able to be vision-based, edge computing. They analyze 100% of the drive, and they are able to give a lot more insights into what's happening on the drive and then context to risk to really understand risk. And so all of these are out there today, and there's probably people on the call today that are using all these different types of cameras. Some of the best practices I show you today are automated through some of these more next generation cameras. Even if you have some of the more basic cameras, there's things that I think you can pull manually to be able to leverage and use some of the data that's there and leverage some of these best practices that we use within the more advanced AI dash cameras. So these are, are those numbers showing? I think they are. So a lot of times I'll ask, like, what do these numbers mean? And what these are, they're actually not related to transportation or cameras at all. These are actually these are numbers from the British cycling team. And they won during the span of like 10 years from 2007 to 2017. They won 178 world championships. They won 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals. And they captured 5 Tour de France victories. They had an incredible run during this time. But what you don't realize is that before this moment, they actually were terrible. They were the most mediocre cycling team that there was. These guys were so bad that even like a lot of the bicycling companies didn't even want them to ride their bikes because they figured they would lose business if this team actually rode their bicycles. So what they did is they went out and they hired a new coach. And this new coach believed in this philosophy called aggregation of marginal gains. And so his belief was that by improving just 1% could result in a significant increase when you add all those up. And it worked for them. It worked. He went out and he looked at very obvious things like the bike seats. Like, let's get them comfortable bike seats and super obvious changes. And then he started looking at some of the like least obvious changes. He looked at like the muscle rub, what muscle rub helped them recover quicker. And so he started to implement these really small changes, and that's how they became so successful. Now, I think we can take this same philosophy and apply this to our safety solutions and the way that we are managing our fleets, because a lot of times we don't have to make huge changes, and sometimes we've already made changes that we have a successful safety program. Now we are looking into those 1% changes. So whether you need to make a big change, we still can start small on these 1% changes, or you're doing pretty well, but there's always room for improvement. And then we can look for these 1% changes throughout our program that are all going to eventually add up to being big changes. So at Netradyne, our system is a little more advanced than a lot of systems out there. And that advancement allows us to find some of these 1% changes a little easier than other systems. So like I said, there are things that our system does that will allow us to be able to do this automatically. But again, other systems out there can find this. So one of the things that Netradyne does is it has this edge intelligence. It's able to analyze 100% of the drive, but it brings causality into what it's reviewing and understanding. And so when it's looking out at an event, and this is one I use common, this is a car that's merging in front of a driver. You can see all those little bounding boxes that the system's analyzing. And so in a legacy system, it understands following distance. So it's looking for whether a vehicle is too close to our driver going down the road. And as this car merges in front of our driver, it says, oh, following distance alert, right? So every system out there is generating that following distance alert. The difference with this edge computing and analyzing the whole drive is Netradyne system goes, hey, we just saw this car merged over. Let's analyze everything around it, the speed of the vehicle, the weight of the vehicle, the surrounding objects. Okay, now can we create space? The driver could. There's ability for the driver to create space and didn't. Now that's a true coaching event, and we coached a driver, hey, you're following too close. Or the driver did, which we think is really great, and we award them what we call a driver star. And I'll show you how that works in just a minute. But being able to understand this causality is really important because it brings that context. It gets the driver's buy-in when you can remove a lot of those noisy alerts. So our system will automatically do this, but in other systems, validating those alerts are really important to be sure that when you're talking to a driver, that it's not something they can validate away. They need to be able to trust that system that's talking to them. The other way that we are able to do this is called human in the loop. Let me see. Did that come up? There we go. I just need to click. There we go. Did you guys see that? I think it's showing now.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So this is a different approach. So what very big buzzword, you'll probably hear this a lot. It's called human in the loop. And what human in the loop is when you get an alert and you, instead of it going directly to the driver, it would have a human review. It's where you have to validate those alerts before you want to coach that driver. And so in that, you have human in the loop, right? It's part of that process flow, that coaching flow. The other way of doing it is called human on the loop. And what that does is the AI is advanced enough that it can actually analyze, review the behavior at such a high accuracy rate, it doesn't require a human to be in that loop of coaching to that driver. So now you can coach directly to that driver without having any type of review or validation. The other way of doing this, though, is human on the loop. And what that does is that when we see that there isn't maybe an alert that's meeting the accuracy threshold that we'd want to see, then that's where a human would go in, review that AI algorithm, make those labeling adjustments, and make that so then it can go back in and we wouldn't have any type of issues. So human in the loop is where you have to require a validation. It kind of halts that. It doesn't allow for that free flow with that AI because you have to validate it, where the human on the loop allows for that to happen in real time, and then you would just be validating and updating the information behind the scene. The other way of doing this too is called risk fusion. So with risk fusion, it allows us to layer the different contexts that you're seeing on a drive. So I'm going to show you this video here, and this kind of gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. And this video is of a stop sign violation, and it's going to be a rolling stop sign violation. So every system out there can pick up a stop sign violation. It's looking for the stop sign, it's looking for the speed of the vehicle, and whether the vehicle came to a stop. But now we're going to layer in some additional things here. So in this video, let me hit play here. Hold on. There we go. Okay. So in this video, as you see, the driver's coming up to the stop sign. You see the stop sign on the right. You can see the bounding box is reading that. It's understanding that. The difference here is if you look straight ahead there, you actually see a police officer and he's waving the driver on. He's telling him, do not stop. So in this context, we're able to understand not just that there's a stop sign and that the speed of the vehicle, but now we actually are able to layer in that police officer is waving that officer, the driver, on. And so being able to add those additional contexts to what's happening, it actually suppresses this coaching, so it doesn't actually send that as a coaching opportunity to the driver, because it's not really a coaching opportunity. So being able to get that accuracy, whether you have systems that are doing it and that are able to bring in that type of accuracy, or whether you need to validate it, making sure that what you're putting in front of these drivers are important, because we want them to respond to those alerts. We want to change that behavior. That's what we're trying to do, is change that behavior for the alerts. Okay, I'm going to show you one more video. In this video, it's about prevention. This is a pedestrian warning. And they do not get hit. Nobody's getting hit in this video. But in this video, the driver is actually not distracted, but the sun actually makes it difficult for him to be able to see. But in this is where you are able to see that it's not just a pedestrian detection, but the pedestrian detection is the fact that the pedestrian steps in the way that would come in contact with the vehicle. So it's not just that there's a pedestrian there, be aware, but it's a pedestrian warning that says this pedestrian could come in contact with a vehicle, which then tells that driver stop. So let me play this for you so you can see. So the driver's going to be making a left-hand turn here. You're going to see the sun hits his windshield and causes a big glare. And it made it almost impossible. So whether that driver was, let me see if let me play it one more time. I'm going to back it up and play it one more time, just so now that you know what's happening, you'll be able to see this. Okay. We have a matter of seconds for this driver to make a decision. So whether that driver was distracted or alert, as this driver was, the AI and that edge computing, not having to have any type of validation, is able to alert that driver right then and there that there's a pedestrian. And not just that there's a pedestrian, but there's a pedestrian that's going to come in contact with the vehicle, and allow that driver to make that split-second decision to hit the brakes. So that I kind of showed you how the AI does this and allows for the accuracy in the system. But again, the message here is, whether you have a system that has that advanced AI or not, is to validate. Make sure that what you're putting in front of your driver is, true coaching events, so that we can continue to change that behavior. Other ways that we're using AI, and that AI can be leveraged to be able to make it easy to find these things. So you can do a video search. You can ask who needs to be coached today. You can include the speeding conditions for alerts. So it's starting to add what the weather was. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we just had one question come in, and it wouldn't really apply to the Q&A. It was more specific question to that video. But when it detected the pedestrian, did the AI stop the truck, or just notify the driver with in-cab alerts that they had to stop?
Oh, yeah, great question. It actually just notified the driver. So nothing that we're doing applies the brakes. It's just notifying the driver to apply the brakes. So great question. Yeah, it's not an ADAS system. It is literally just a notification to the driver to stop.
Thanks, Bobbi.
Yeah, great question. So you can leverage, so just to get back, you can leverage these different types of AI to do some of this work to be able to, be more efficient, be more accurate in the way that we are engaging and responding with our drivers on the fleet. And again, that's so important in order to get them to be engaged and to get that buy-in from them. The other thing you have to do is you gotta have a level playing field. And so our system does this in a way that we are able to bring in like context to the alerts. So when you have drivers that drive different routes or different times a day or different, lengths of time, leveling that playing field can be a little difficult. Our system does that for you because it's analyzing it and bringing that in. This is my example of how this compliance piece works. I have Joe and Peter. Joe has 5 stop sign alerts. Peter has 4. If I only have that information, I would say, Joe, you're a riskier driver than Peter because you've generated more alerts. But when we start to understand what they actually saw in that drive, then we are able to use data to really tell that story. And so now we can say, look, Peter, you had less alerts, but you actually saw less stop signs, which made your compliance a lot lower than Joe. Joe's actually a safer driver than Peter when it comes to stop signs. And so being able to leverage that data, leverage the playing field for when you're talking to drivers, because it's hard to fight against the data. It's unbiased. And so it just makes that really easy when you're coaching drivers. Now, I do have to touch on how our green zone works, just so that you guys can understand how we leverage this. And I think the majority of systems out there today have some type of scoring system that you can leverage from driver and then also from a fleet level. But in ours, we do bring in some additional things, and we do this to help with that level the playing field for it to be fair, and also to be able to leverage the data when we're talking to drivers, fleets. So with this, we do bring in driver stars. This is how we do our positive reinforcement in driving. And then we also bring in all those boring minutes. I call them, they're the green minutes. This is when a driver drove 100% compliant. We actually recognize that. And then that compliance piece that we just looked at all goes into our scoring. So the scoring now really starts to be correlated to risk and accident probability, and is a great way to be able to rank drivers within the fleet to be able to show how they're performing. It is also a way that our clients will leverage as part of a lot of these incentive programs. And I'll show you some of the programs that they're doing today. But they leverage this very heavily in those programs because it automatically levels that playing field. But there are ways that you can pull in the data and do that on your own with other systems as well. But making sure that drivers have a clear, transparent way that you're measuring them is really important to get that engagement that they're there. So this is very, you guys have all probably seen this, the Heinrich's triangle. And basically what it says is that a few, any of the minor injuries, near misses, unsafe acts, all lead up toward catastrophic event. So there's typically these indicators that you know if you're going to see these a lot in your fleet, that it's going to be leading towards not the direction we want to go. We are trending in the wrong way. And so that's where we start to look for these things. We start training drivers, we start coaching, right, on these better, safer behaviors, because we want the drivers to drive in the safe acts, right? We want to live down in this green zone, right? In the green zone there, rather than living in the unsafe acts, the near misses. So we try to train and push them into these more safe acts because we know it trends us away from the claims. And so one of the ways that we do that is by recognizing the positive behaviors that they do. So trying to find ways that you can recognize those good behaviors will help with getting them down into these safe acts. So this was if you look at one of the key beliefs in this is that we believe the concept that in the absence of bad driving, what fills the vacuum is good driving. And so if we can, basically the philosophy is central to like our green zone score. And it emphasizes the idea that when a system stops focusing solely on penalizing mistakes and instead recognizes positive behavior, it creates an environment when good driving habits just naturally flourish. So we kind of shift away from the punitive and really start focusing on the positive results that drivers are doing. This really starts to show engagement at work. And I thought this was such an interesting study that only 31% of employees are actually engaged at work, and that you have 18% that are actually completely disengaged and maybe even like negatively influencing a company. And so how do we, try to shift this 31% higher and eliminate some of that 18%? That we're doing. And we believe that it's through the power of positive reinforcement. So here in this study, almost 90% of employees who've received thanks or recognition felt a high level of trust. And then 65% actually put more energy into work if they were recognized. That this positive reinforcement actually has a really good benefit on getting drivers and employees more engaged and at work by doing this. And there was another study that showed that the effectiveness of incentives, so actually doing small, consistent rewards, are way more effective than larger, infrequent ones. So keeping those small and frequent, and then also adding in real-time feedback, modest incentives, and performance tracking was also a really great way to get an effectiveness of these incentives. So building your incentive program, you want to develop really clear goals and make concrete goals like improving fleet safety, increasing customer satisfaction, or boosting revenue. Then establish smaller steps so your fleet can take these smaller goals that meet in aligning with those larger goals, especially with the drivers. And then finding the right reward. Not all the fleets have the same needs or the same would choose the same rewards, and so figuring out what those rewards are really important. I was just presenting with a fleet, and what they do is they actually reward their driver stars, and they get points or dollar amounts to these driver stars, and they can go into the company store and purchase company branded clothing. And so I told her they had a request that the store add socks and underwear that were branded. And so I told her, I said, you're winning at your safety game when they're requesting those types of items in your store to purchase. And so knowing what motivates your drivers and what would be the best way to incentivize them is really important, because it's not a one size fits all. And then gamification and peer pressure are also very powerful. University of Pennsylvania study had a handheld phone while they were using was reduced by 20% just by gamifying the program design. So there's no surprise that if you add any type of incentive to something, that you're probably going to get better results by adding that. Now, how do we do that? How do you find these moments that you can actually reward drivers? And I think there are some systems that are starting to do that today. We've been doing it for quite a while. I'm going to show you a video of one of the ways that we reward these driver stars. So this, let me play this. You have a Cadillac merging onto the highway here. The driver just takes his foot off the gas, creates that little bit of space, allows that pocket for this car to merge in safely. The system automatically recognizes that and rewards that. So these are moments in time that you can find in other systems to be able to reward or tell drivers, hey, that's a really great job. Especially if you're doing some type of validation before coaching the drivers, you can find these happen tos. I happen to see this. This is great behavior. And you want to make sure that you're sending that out and that you're recognizing those drivers. our system automatically does a lot of this, and there's different ways that they look at this. So you have situational, where it's like creating space, moving over, that we can say, hey, you get it. You get a driver star. The durational ones, I think, are super impactful. Durational ones are where we're moving those drivers from unsafe acts and from those near misses down into those safer zones, right, that we looked at earlier on the triangle. These are, because what these do is they say, hey, we're going to replace your behavior of speeding, and we're going to look, and we're only going to focus on 2,400 driving minutes. And in those 2,400 driving minutes, if you don't speed, you earn a driver star. So we start to look at these durational timeframes, and we ask drivers, all we want you to do is focus on the next 2,400 minutes and not speeding. If you do that, you get a star. And then that's where you start to build these incentive programs and things around those positive moments. And so being able to replace the bad behavior, the risky behavior, with positive behavior is one way to get that to be a long-lasting behavior change, a better habit than what they would have if you're just saying, hey, please stop doing that, or don't do that. And so again, Netradyne system picks these up really easily. We have these built into the program, but there are ways within systems today that you can find these moments and start really highlighting the good things that the drivers are doing. It's funny, when we developed our green zone score, Adam Kahn talks about this story because he was part of that development. And when our cameras were first designed, they had a red, yellow, green light on them. And in that red, yellow, green light, they thought the majority of the time was going to be red, right? Those were risky behaviors. And what they found is that 80% of the time, they were actually in the green. They weren't in the red. They were actually doing the right things. And so that's how the green zone score was born, and the green minutes, we call them, of the positive driving, is because majority of the time they're doing the right thing. And if we can recognize that and continue to really reinforce those good behaviors, we're really only talking about managing the edges of those drivers that aren't. And so finding ways to find these are really important to be able to encourage and change that driver's behavior. We also leverage technology, and a lot of systems have this available today. So if you're not using the technology, I would encourage you to turn these on and use them. The reason that I like the technology is because it's unbiased. It's coming directly from the device to the driver, and it's coaching the driver in real time or near real time. So we do this. This is kind of our coaching workflow, the way that we do it. And I know that other systems have the capability to do this as well. And you typically just have to turn them on in order to leverage these. But the first one I like is the in-cab coaching. It coaches a driver in real time and allows the driver to change that behavior. And if they do, it never offloads to a manager to coach later. You actually don't even have documentation that happened. So if you get into a litigation situation and they want to see all the alerts and whether they were coached or not, these alerts don't even show up in that, because we coached the driver, they changed their behavior, the camera did what it was supposed to, the driver did what they're supposed to. There's no coachable event afterwards. There's no, we don't need to change anything. So let me see if this will play for you. Our alerts are voice activated. Might not play on here, but here's what it sounds like. This is my best interpretation of it. It'll say, please slow down, create space. And so it's this voice activation that's talking to the driver. Now, if you're a people hauler and you have people, we probably don't want to have voice activated alerts on. We do have tone-based alerts for those types of situations. But being able to coach that driver in real time is awesome, because it empowers them and it engages them. It allows them to make that decision to do the right thing. The other way that we do this is through our app, where we can show them videos. You have to bring transparency to your program so that drivers know what they're being held accountable for, but then they also want to see it. What are you seeing? What do you see them doing? And so being able to show them the videos of them doing it is very, very powerful. So we do it through an app. We have a driver app. They can actually get a virtual coaching every week that shows them, hey, driver, here's a video of you doing your most severe alert. And keep in mind, some of these most severe alerts could actually be driver stars, where they are earning driver stars more than they are generating any type of severe alert. And that's pretty awesome. But it'll show them their most severe alert, a video of them doing that. It'll show them a few other examples. It'll show them where they rank in the fleet. It'll show them where they could rank if they change that behavior. So it gives them very actionable items. And I think that's super important. It's showing them like this week, you're going to focus on speeding. And this week, you're going to focus on stopping at stop signs. That's what's impacting your score the most. And that's where you're going to be able to move the needle and get yourself closer to the top of the fleet or closer to where we need you to be to know that you're a good driver. The other way that you can also communicate is through our remote coaching, where you can like push coaching to drivers to the app, and it allows for a two-way communication. And that's the other piece that's important. You've got to have a way that drivers can communicate back based on what they're seeing. And so being able to say, hey, let's talk about this. This isn't what happened, or I don't agree with this, is an important aspect to this, because they need to be able to communicate back what they're being coached to and have that open conversation. And so if they aren't able to come into an office or have that conversation, then the app allows you to have that two-way conversation through the app around the video of that event. And then also allowing the drivers to say, hey, if this isn't an actual coachable event, I believe most systems out there today allow you to maybe move that to neutral or non-coachable, so it's not impacting their score. And so that transparency, that making sure that it's fair is really important for these types of programs. And then when you look at coaching as like, the face-to-face, this is where it will be more so for like recognition and escalations. And we have quite a few fleets that are doing this very, very well. They set a fleet goal. They tell their drivers to hit that goal. So some type of our green zone score, whatever score that is the goal. Watch your weekly coachings. We don't need to talk to you. You are empowered to do exactly what we're asking you to do. And so that, I think, is a really great way to get them engaged. Because again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is engage drivers so that we're changing behavior, which will then result in our change in claims. So that, without getting them engaged, without changing behavior, we're not getting the results that we'd want to see or an ROI from the system that we're putting in. There's all different types of incentives that we're seeing from our clients. And I think one of the most important thing when you look at incentives is that it's not just to the top driver. You want to be sure that you are engaging all the different drivers within the fleet. And so you're going to have top performers that'll perform, week over week or month over month, depending on how you're doing your incentive program. But you want to try to engage all of them. So maybe it's the most improved driver that week, or maybe it's the terminal. It's a terminal level contest, and it's who can beat the top guy in that terminal gets $20. Like, there's different ways that you can set these up to be successful, where the whole fleet is engaged and able to participate in these programs, not just the top drivers. I'm going to highlight one of my favorite fleets. This fleet is now a National Interstate client. You will probably see them at some of the different events and summits. I know they were just at the safety summit. But Ron Burke at AIM Transport is one of my favorite fleets to talk about. I think he's done an incredible job on this driver incentive programs that he's put together. He didn't just put programs together that award like a top driver, but he did a program that the whole fleet can get around. So they have some pretty cool programs that they do throughout the year. One of them is Drive for the Crown. If you guys, hilarious, get on YouTube. You can Google their different like sport commentators that they do leading up to Drive for the Crown. Ron is always, I've known him a while, and he has always been open to talking to people and sharing like how he does these programs and the way that they come up with these. Their drivers love them. Their fleet managers love them. It has really created a really neat culture around safety. But the one I want to talk about today is his Guardian of the Highway. And in his Guardian of the Highway program, this is a really cool program that they do that the drivers can earn. And the top driver of the month earns a hat with the patch on it. And then the top driver of the quarter earns a Carhartt jacket with the patches on it. And this is all around the scoring. So the drivers understand how the program works. He's very transparent on it. And they communicate heavily around it. But these drivers that earn the Guardian of the Highway are also the ones that become his mentors. Those are the ones that he goes to that lead, like any new technology they do, anything they're changing, they would loop these guys in and they'd be part of like their tire team. But when I happened to be with Ron and his team in Indianapolis at the Indy 500 one year, and they told me about this driver, Curtis. Now, Curtis wanted to win the hat. He wanted the Guardian of the Highway hat. And he went to his manager and they said, you know, Curtis, you're a good driver. You're just not a great driver. And AIM is one of those fleets that performs at such a high level that you have to be a great driver to earn those incentives, because the entire fleet has really raised the bar, and Ron has them performing almost to perfection. They perform very, very well. And so they told Curtis, you know what, Curtis, if you wanted to win a hat, you would have to focus on those driver stars. You're going to have to earn driver stars. So Curtis headed out, and he's in the mountains of Virginia, I believe, here. And as he's driving, in his mind, it is that he is going for this hat. He wants the Guardian of the Highway hat. Well, the driver star is probably the easiest driver star to win, in my opinion, is if there's a disabled vehicle, just move over. And the system automatically reward a driver star. Very, very easy to earn. So as you see, he's going to come up around this corner. You see that green, the green highway sign there. Just past that sign, you're going to be able to see the vehicle that's disabled on the side of the road. And Curtis is going to recognize this, and he's going to start to move over. So you can see he's going to start moving over now. And as he's starting to move over, you're going to see that lady throw her arms in the air, and she tries to run in front of his truck. And she actually tried to commit suicide by truck right there. Well, Curtis missed her, and the only reason that he was able to miss her is because he was already moving over. The reason Curtis was moving over was because he wanted to earn his driver star. So he pulled over, he got medical attention for her. He came back to his fleet manager and he said, you know what? I never understood why. Like, I was doing this for a hat. My why was a hat. What changed here for him was that he now understood why they were asking him to change that behavior. Not only did he save her life, but he actually saved his career, because he probably wouldn't still be driving if he had hit her. And so now Curtis has a hat. He's an incredible driver. I just asked Ron about him, and he said he's doing awesome, which is great. But this is the power of those incentives. By incenting your drivers to do the right thing, to change that behavior, not only saves lives, but saves their career and puts them in situations like this where they are not going to be hitting someone. And so a really, really great job to Ron and the team over there and what they're doing around these incentives, because they have found the secret sauce there, and they are changing driver behavior by doing this. And they're doing it in a way that engages, empowers drivers, and that everybody wants to earn this. And what a cool message to have that Guardian of the Highway as their program. It's bigger than just, hey, I want to be the top driver, but it's actually that we're out there saving lives by our behaviors that we've learned. And then finally, there is a science around all of this, and we know that as you decrease the severity of alerts and you like automatically increases our green zone score, that there is an ROI around that, changing that driver behavior. We have it built into our system that allows fleets to be able to really see this. So we know for every 50 points we increase a green zone score, we can decrease accidents per million mile by 13 to 17%. There's also an ROI that is attached to this around the fuel efficiency. So when you start to think of these safety behaviors and the way that we coach these drivers in these behaviors, there's a parallel or a direct correlation to fuel efficiency. So when you look at fuel efficiency, if I have a driver that's like not speeding, that isn't hard accelerating or hitting their brakes, these have a direct correlation to the fuel. And so what we've done is we've started to align these behaviors that we coach in the safety with the fuel efficiency. And so now there's an ROI that directly ties our safety solution to fuel efficiencies. And there's actually scorecards that we have for the safety program. So if I'm coaching a driver on safety, I also have a fuel efficiency scorecard for them as well, or report card that would show them how that correlates over. And so there's an underlining ROI by improving the safety and these behaviors, that direct correlation to fuel and fuel efficiency as well. So another place to find ROI is within that fuel efficiency. And then finally, just a couple fleets that have done really well, some case studies here that we can share. These guys had a 25% reduction in incidents, which is incredible. ABC, oh, where'd their picture go? There we go. They had an incredible result on just even changing distracted driving and reducing their speeding incidents by 50%, which is incredible. And then finally, Salt Lake City Express also did a really great job and actually saved on their insurance, which is amazing. So, okay, thank you guys. That's what I had today. If you have questions, I will turn it to Chris and he'll help me get to those so I can help answer them.
So, Bobbi, you talked a lot about reviewing the events, coaching drivers. How often should fleets be reviewing data and looking at these events when they come in?
Good. That is a great question. An event or like an alert, I wouldn't say is necessarily a judgment of risk. Like a standalone alert isn't a standalone judgment of risk. One of the things that you're looking for is behaviors and trends. And so every alert that comes in, I think would be really difficult to coach and to also be able to validate. But I think what you have to look for is those behaviors and trends and coach to those. And so like that's basically what our system's looking for and doing with that compliance piece, is trying to understand what are those behaviors and trends of drivers that we need to change. So if a driver has one rolling stop out of 99, I don't know that it's a behavior and trend that we have to coach to. But if you were like me and I had 37 in one day, okay, now we have a behavior and trend that we need to coach to, because that's risky behavior that we want to change. And so I think it's a tough question to answer, because in litigation, they want to see that you're coaching those. But again, I think it's hard to manage that if you're trying to coach everyone. So, and in my opinion, you're looking for those behaviors and trends. Those are showing us risk, and we're coaching to those risks.
And then obviously dual facing cameras continue to be a hot topic in the industry. From your experience, how have you seen carriers get buy-in for those driver-facing cameras at a time when there is a driver shortage?
Mm-hmm. Oh, great question. Well, one of the things I think with the in-cab cameras, because there's still lots of opinions on the in-cab cameras out there. One of the things that we've done is we've offered different privacy modes for that. so we can kind of help with maybe some of the concern they have around the privacy of the driver. So the first one that we offer is enhanced privacy mode. The camera's on, analyzing the driver's behavior, but there's no video. And then the other way you can do it is you can blur the driver or passengers and still allow for that coaching to happen with the in-cab camera. So the different things that you're capturing on the in-cab camera is like distracted driving, seatbelt wearing, drowsy. So, if you don't have that on, you are losing those, which have a very high frequency for events. And so, there's leveraging the different options that are available there and leaning heavily into the positive reinforcement. So if my camera's on and my driver's not distracted and we're heavily earning those driver stars and we're incentivizing those driver stars, it changes the way that the driver interacts with the camera and the concern of that camera being on. One of our clients actually named their camera Nettie. And so they have huge banners all over that say, listen to Nettie, she'll get you home safe. And so it's changing the perception of the camera, bringing that transparency to the driver, that will help with that perception of having that inward camera on.
Love that. Awesome. And then a couple last ones kind of surrounding incentives. You spoke a lot about the green zone score. What are your thoughts on making these, and there's different benchmarking scores for different camera providers out there. What are your thoughts of making benchmarking scores public with other drivers and the organization? Have you seen more of a positive or a negative effect when kind of those are on full display?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I think it's positive, to be honest. I think that it's positive in the way that you do it. Because if it's always the top drivers that you're displaying, but never showing like maybe the most improved or the driver that, had the least speeding, like I think that you need to make sure that even in, making it a public display, that you're still engaging the entire fleet in that, and that there's others that are seeing their names on that leaderboard. But we've had several fleets that maybe don't have the budget to do incentives. So one of the incentive is getting your name on that board, it being in the newsletter, being that shout out during the safety meetings. And so I think that is a really powerful way to be able to highlight those drivers doing the right thing. But again, try to include everyone in the fleet in that, so that you're saying, hey, here's our most improved driver. We're focused on distracted driving. Guess what? You are a top driver in not being distracted. Like finding those little nuggets to share, I think is important, so that you're seeing other names go up and it engages everyone.
Awesome. That was a good transition into the last question we had, which was obviously when we think of incentives, we think monetary. You spoke on a great one, the Guardian cap. It's just a simple hat. Any other creative non-monetary incentives that you've seen that have worked really well?
Yeah, I think is probably your most, outside of the money, is company swag is a big deal, because people are they have a pride in what they're doing and who you work for, and being able to earn that and wear that and know that you earned it. There's something to that. And so company swag actually is a very good incentive that people want to earn, right? They look forward to it. It's like, how did you get that? And so I think it brings a really cool culture and a pride around the program. We've actually seen like PTO hours that they've earned. You can earn a PTO hours. There's another company, they actually earn rings. Like they earned emerald rings that they earn, and they can earn one for their spouse as well. There's different raffles I've seen done that they can raffle off different items. So you can get into the raffle for every driver star you get in the raffle. And then when they raffle off that item, the winner gets that item. So there's all different ways that fleets can get creative. It doesn't have to be monetary. that people want to feel recognized. They want to feel like they're part of the program. And I think finding ways that you can do that is where you're going to find the biggest success, because just throwing money at people isn't always going to get you the same results.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of different ways to encourage and engage drivers. So that's all that we had for today. If you have any additional questions for Bobbi or anyone at National Interstate, please fill out that survey. There's going to be a question that asks you if you'd like to connect with Bobbi, or if you have any other additional questions, we'll be able to connect with you individually there. But thank you again for your participation, and we look forward to seeing everybody at our next session. Have a great rest of your day.
Hi, everyone.